Throughout the centuries, humans have constantly questioned the existence of a divine voice that echoes within their own minds. This question is not just theological or spiritual, but also deeply philosophical. How can the mind by itself be a channel for the voice of God? Amidst the chaos of everyday life and the dispersion of our thoughts, is it truly possible to hear this voice with clarity? The human mind, with its labyrinths and mysteries, resembles a cave where divine echoes may reverberate. But these echoes are often difficult to discern. Silence and introspection are necessary to fully hear them. The quest to understand communication with the divine begins with a simple question. If God speaks through our minds, how can we learn to listen? And even more profound, how can we distinguish this voice from our own projections, desires, and fears? Perhaps, like the sun reflecting on the still waters of a calm lake, the divine voice needs a tranquil mind, free from internal storms, to manifest clearly. The invitation, then, is for deep reflection on the relationship between the mind and divinity, a journey in search of answers that, while they may seem distant, are closer than we imagine. God speaks to us in silence, but are we prepared to listen? The human mind, throughout the history of philosophy, has been interpreted as a portal through which the divine communicates with man. In different philosophical traditions, we see contrasting views on how reason, intuition, and faith can connect us to the transcendent. Plotinus, the great representative of Neoplatonism, saw the mind as a mirror of the primordial unity, where all forms of existence emanate from the one, the divine source. For him, deep thought was a path to transcend the material and reach the divine. Descartes, on the other hand, believed that reason was the tool that allowed us to understand eternal truths, evidencing the presence of God through the clarity and distinctness of thought. In his philosophy, God is the point of origin for all certainty. However, Kant challenges this view by arguing that the human mind, due to its limitations, could never grasp the noumenon, the thing in itself, which would include the very essence of God. For him, faith assumed a central role, filling the space that reason could not reach. Kierkegaard offers an existential perspective, where faith is a leap, a subjective encounter with the divine, surpassing human logic and reason. He saw the mind as a platform for anguish and doubt, which paradoxically lead to faith. This dilemma between reason and spirituality continues to challenge humanity. If the mind is a channel for the divine, how should we use it? Through meticulous logic or abandonment into the unknown? The answer may lie somewhere between these extremes, where reason and faith coexist, and intuition emerges as a bridge connecting these two seemingly opposing worlds. In the constant noise of the external world, the divine voice seems to get lost, like a whisper amidst turmoil. However, spiritual traditions teach us that the way to hear the voice of God is not by looking outward, but within, in the deep silence and stillness of the mind. Inner silence, practiced through meditation or contemplative prayer, opens the necessary space for this voice to manifest. In contemplative Christianity, figures such as Saint John of the Cross and Saint Teresa of Avila emphasized the value of introspection and silence to achieve mystical union with God. For them, the divine does not speak through words but through a silent presence that reveals itself in the fertile void of the soul. Similarly, in Zen Buddhism, silence is revered as a gateway to deep wisdom. The practice of zazen, seated meditation, seeks to empty the mind of noisy thoughts so that the ultimate truth beyond words can be revealed. Heidegger, a 20th century philosopher, introduces the concept of authentic listening as a practice of openness to what is, a listening that goes beyond mere passive hearing and becomes a state of being. This idea can be linked to listening to the divine, not a passive listening but an active and attentive disposition to what emerges in silence. Inner silence, therefore, is more than the absence of sound. It is the preparation to hear a voice that speaks through silence. It is in the pause between thoughts, in the calm of the spirit, that the mind opens to the sacred. Thus, inner silence is a key. When we quiet the mind, we open the possibility of hearing what the divine wants to say to us. Communication with God is not something that occurs through words but through presence, through spirit. And it is in that inner emptiness, that absence of noise, that the divine makes itself present. Intuition has been described by many philosophers and mystics as the whisper of truth, a silent voice that transcends logic and reason. In the spiritual context, intuition arises as a manifestation of the divine presence, a form of communication that requires no words but is felt in the heart and soul. When the mind is quieted, intuition reveals itself as the purest channel for hearing the voice of God. Henri Bergson, the philosopher of intuition, proposed that true understanding of reality does not come through logical reasoning but through intuition, a kind of direct empathy with the flow of life. For Bergson, intuition connects us with the essence of things, with that which escapes intellectual analysis. In this sense, intuition can be seen as a means through which God speaks, not in the form of arguments, but as a flash of truth that emerges in the deep silence of the mind. In the spiritual tradition, intuition is often associated with contemplative prayer. In this practice, the person does not seek God through petitions or words but through a silent, receptive openness. It is in the silence of the heart that intuition flourishes, allowing the individual to perceive the divine presence within. Thus, contemplative prayer is not a dialogue in the traditional sense but a tuning, a direct connection with the divine through intuition. Therefore, intuition is more than a simple hunch or instinct. It is a sacred language through which the divine can manifest. By cultivating intuition, we approach a deeper listening, which does not depend on logic or understanding but on a direct and intimate perception of God's presence. Dreams from ancient times have been seen as mystical portals, windows to the divine, where God's voice can manifest in a veiled but powerful way. In the stillness of the night, as the conscious mind quiets, the unconscious awakens, and with it come revelations that escape daytime logic. Throughout history, many spiritual traditions have revered dreams as direct messages from the divine, guiding humans to profound insights about themselves and the cosmos. Carl Jung, with his theory of the collective unconscious, suggests that dreams are not merely individual products but reflections of universal archetypes, symbols that connect the dreamer to a larger dimension shared by all humanity. For Jung, these archetypes are fragments of ancient wisdom and can be interpreted as vehicles for the divine voice, communicating through symbols and images. Dreams, therefore, not only reveal hidden truths about the individual but can also convey universal and spiritual messages. In religious traditions, there is a special reverence for dreams as a means of divine communication. In Christianity, we find accounts of biblical figures receiving messages from God through dreams, such as Joseph, who was guided by dream visions at crucial moments. In Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad also received divine revelations in his dreams, reinforcing the belief that the unconscious can be fertile ground for the manifestation of the sacred. Thus, both in Jungian philosophy and in spiritual traditions, dreams and visions are legitimate channels through which God can communicate. The human unconscious, touched by forces that transcend the material, becomes a space for mystical dialogue. When we open our minds to the possibility that the divine can speak through dreams, we begin to realize that there is much more in the depths of our psyche than we can see on the surface. Emotions, often seen as unstable or irrational forces, play a crucial role in the encounter with the divine. They not only connect us to what is human but also paradoxically open us to the transcendent. God speaks to the human heart through emotions, and it is through these intense experiences that we can feel His presence more deeply and intimately. Emotions are, thus, the fertile ground where spirituality can flourish. Philosopher Blaise Pascal understood this connection in a unique way. For him, the heart has its reasons that reason itself does not know. Pascal believed that emotions, especially faith, transcend rational logic. The human heart, with its emotions and intuitions, is the place where God reveals Himself most truly. In his thoughts, Pascal argued that faith is not something that can be proven or understood through pure reason but is deeply experienced in emotions. On the other hand, Spinoza saw emotions as part of the conatus, the drive of each being to persevere in its own existence. He identified certain emotions such as joy and love as paths to beatitude, the state of blessing in which the human being approaches God. For Spinoza, intellectual love for God was the highest form of emotion, an emotion that transcends the ego and merges with the divine essence. Positive emotions such as love, compassion, and gratitude can open spiritual doors, allowing us to come into contact with the divine in ways that rational minds often cannot. Deep feelings of reverence or humility, for example, create a bridge between the human and the sacred. They make us receptive to the presence of God, as if our hearts were temples open to the manifestation of the divine. Therefore, it is by allowing oneself to feel, by fully embracing emotion and recognizing its spiritual value, that we become more open to the voice of God. In this state, the soul finds its way back to the divine source through the subtleties of feeling, where each emotion is a step toward the sacred. The human mind, though it seems individual, is connected to a vast field of collective consciousness. Reflecting on spirituality, we begin to understand that the divine experience is not limited to solitary encounters. It expands and intensifies when shared with others. Collective communication, whether in moments of group prayer, communal rituals, or simple spiritual gatherings, creates a network of minds in harmony with the sacred. Teilhard de Chardin, a philosopher and paleontologist, envisioned the existence of a noosphere, a layer of consciousness that envelopes the earth, created by the mental and spiritual interactions of all human beings. For him, humanity's evolution was not only physical but also spiritual, heading toward a culminating point, the Omega Point, where all creation would unite in a divine communion. This vision of global consciousness suggests that as humanity unites in thought and spirit, it draws closer to God. Spiritual traditions also reflect this concept of unity through communal prayer. In Christianity, group prayer, such as in masses and worship services, is a central practice. When we pray together, our minds and hearts align, and the connection with the divine strengthens, creating a collective spiritual energy. In Buddhism, sanghas, spiritual communities, practice group meditation, believing that the presence of others intensifies the meditative experience and broadens the field of peace and compassion. This phenomenon can also be seen in large religious rituals, where thousands of people, united by a common purpose, create an environment conducive to divine manifestation. The power of the collective mind becomes evident when we observe the strength of these shared experiences, where the individual is surpassed and the spiritual becomes universal. Thus, the human mind is not an isolated island but part of a vast interconnected network. Through collective communication, we become both receivers and transmitters of the divine presence, enhancing our ability to hear and feel the voice of God. In community, the human mind reaches spiritual dimensions that would be difficult to access individually. Creation, in all its vastness and complexity, is a living reflection of the divine. Nature, with its indescribable beauty and mysterious forces, speaks to the human mind in subtle ways, inviting us to perceive God's presence in every detail, in every pulse of life. To observe the natural world with contemplative eyes is, in essence, to hear God's voice revealed through the simplicity and grandeur of creation. Spinoza, with his philosophy of Deus sive natura, God or nature, argued that God was not a separate entity from the world, but that he manifested in everything that exists. For Spinoza, God is nature itself in its movement and order, and by contemplating nature we connect directly with the divine. This perspective leads us to see the cosmos as a continuous theophany, a constant revelation of God in the forms of matter and the laws of physics that govern the universe. Eco-spirituality, a movement that unites spirituality and ecological concern, reinforces this idea by suggesting that nature is not only divine creation but also a medium through which God communicates his deepest truths to us. The harmony found in the cycles of life, the balance in the forces of nature, and the interdependence of all things are reflections of divine wisdom. By connecting with nature attentively, we begin to understand that it is a mirror of the divine, a tangible manifestation of what is invisible. When we walk through a forest, observe the movement of waters, or gaze at the starry sky, our mind expands and we feel a divine whisper. Creation, with its forms and colors, speaks a silent language that only a contemplative mind can hear. By opening our senses to nature, we not only admire its beauty but also tune into God's voice, which manifests in every falling leaf, every breaking wave on the shore, every star shining in the firmament. The connection between the mind and the divine, therefore, strengthens when we perceive nature as an extension of God's consciousness. Through creation, God calls us to a state of reverence, humility, and deep listening, reminding us that the divine voice echoes in every aspect of existence, if we are willing to hear it. Throughout our journey of reflection, we have seen how the human mind, when quieted and open, can become a channel for the divine voice. From meditation to inner silence, from intuition to dreams and visions, through emotions and collective communion, and even to the deep connection with nature, all these experiences are ways to open the portals of the spirit to the divine. However, in a modern world full of distractions, where external noise often drowns out our inner voice, attentive listening to the divine presence becomes a challenge. Living in this time requires discipline and a constant practice of self-awareness and contemplation. Hearing God's voice requires not only distancing ourselves from external noise but also calming internal storms, purifying the mind so that it can reflect divine truth, like a lake reflects the sky. It is necessary to cultivate patience, surrender, and the recognition that the divine speaks in the subtlest ways, in silence, in the purest emotions and connections with others and with nature. For the reader, the invitation is simple but profound. Create spaces of silence, of stillness, where the divine voice can be perceived. In the rush of modern life, this may seem difficult, but every small moment of contemplation is a step toward the sacred. The practice of intuition, listening to dreams, living emotions with openness and gratitude, all of this prepares us to recognize the messages of God that are constantly around us. The divine voice is not thunderous, it does not abruptly demand our attention. It is like a gentle whisper, a breeze that murmurs between the lines of everyday life. It is up to us, then, to create the conditions to hear this voice, to perceive the subtleties with which God speaks to us, and thus respond to the divine call in our own existence. At the end of this journey of reflection, the true challenge is to find this voice amidst the chaos and allow it to guide us toward a path of greater connection, peace, and wisdom.